Commuting with Clint. Yeah, I thought this morning we'd talk a little bit about the bike that mentioned a few times called Raijin. That's gonna be our K&O build, if you will. It's a idea that I came up with a while back. I just thought that I would give you guys a little insight into it. So, the platform that we're starting with is a Honda GL1000 Goldwing. Now, I can never remember the year on it, but I want to say it's a 77. And this is technically the first bike that me and Alex got for just shits and giggles, basically. It was kind of running all right when we got it. Alex rode it around the house a few times. But other than that, nothing too crazy. It was kind of a beat up bike. Some guys had messed with it before, so it had some quirks about it. But yeah, so when we first started working on it, Raijin was going to be a cafe racer kind of style thing, and we were gonna do a monoshock conversion on it, and do some chassis modifications to really, you know, get the stance right as far as a cafe bike is concerned. But so once we got to a point and we had disassembled it because we were going to move it somewhere else to work on it, and then we had kind of put it on the ground without the shock in it, and I was like, man, this thing looks pretty good. Look. Okay, this is weird. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, so yeah, we had put it down on the ground low, and just looking at it, I think we both kind of at the same time thought, man, this would probably be way cooler. It's like a hard-tailed bobber or chopper than a cafe racer. So then I started thinking, we messed with it some more, and we kind of paused on it because the business started getting going, and then we just kind of decided that we were gonna go a different route on it. And then that's when we decided that it was gonna be more of a choppery looking thing. And then I started looking around, and I was like, man, you know what would be really sweet? A Bosuzoku style build. And if you're not familiar, a Bosuzoku bike is a style that was popularized in Japan for their motorcycle. I don't want to call them gangs because I don't think they really roll like that anymore. I mean, there's probably some people kind of in the mix like that, and I think it's more popular with chicks now than anything else. But so it started off, it was kind of the same way as American biker gang started off. Guys got back from World War II. You're a soldier, you've been doing some wild stuff for your government, you come back, you lost friends, things are changed, can't find a job, stuff like that. So then biker culture just kind of naturally took off from there. But believe it or not, it got to the point that in Japan, the modification of motorcycles for the most part at a certain point in time was illegal. So they couldn't really make them faster or do a whole lot to them, or they weren't able to ride them on the streets. But what they could do is make super bold and pretty much as wild as you wanted aesthetic choices. So first it started off with guys doing like racing fairings, big headlights, like an old school style fairing. And then you know, they would do like a king queen seat essentially, but they were doing them all like one piece. And then slowly it just kind of kept getting, you know, who could be more and more wild. And then they were getting custom paint, custom upholstery. They're putting 2 fairings on, and they put the fairings up higher so that way you had to look under the headlight of the fairing to see in front of you. And they'd have like 2 or 3 of them, so they'd have like 3 headlights. Obviously there's Japanese bikes, so you know, they'd have multiple exhausts. Like a 2-cylinder would have like 6 exhaust pipes on it, and they would go up super high, or they'd make shapes with them. That didn't come till later, but as things kept progressing more and more, that's the way that it was going. Then so eventually they just turned into this whole thing, and basically they wanted to be as wild looking and as loud sounding as possible. And I think Bosuzoku is the term they coined for them, because I think it means, I've seen a couple things and I can't say for sure, I don't speak Japanese, but I think Bosuzoku means violent noise tribe, or just noisy tribe, something like that. But yeah, and it's hilarious because they have these big meets, and there's guys that basically they just do this. They sit there on their bike and they're like, and they do stuff like that all the time. And you know, they're just hanging out. There's a lot of rockabilly going on. Guys in leather jackets, baseball bats. They have like those like, I forget what you call it. I guess like when the shogunate was in charge of Japan, they had those flags that the guys would wear on their backs. They have those mounted on their bikes with like the little group's name and colors and all that. Basically just a bunch of people just wanting to hang out and have a really good time. I'm sure there's plenty of sake and beer to go around. But anyway, yeah, so like I said, they couldn't do a whole lot to modify their bikes over in Japan. And in Japan, they don't really have big bikes when it started. So traditionally, all of their bikes are like 650 cc's, 700 maybe, or less. But I see a lot of guys rolling around on like, you know, 400 and 500 stuff. I think that's like CV 550s or like your XSS 50s. Was that SR 400s or something like that? I don't remember. But I am terrible with bikes when it comes to letter and number designations. But anyway, so yeah, so they couldn't go fast. So when we decided we were going to change directions on Raijin, the reason we're calling it Raijin is because it's basically going to have 4 straight pipes on it, so it's going to be loud. And Raijin is one of the Japanese gods of thunder and maybe lightning. I don't remember, because it's Raijin and Fujin, and I think Fujin is just the wind and rain or something like that. Anyway, they're like 2 brothers constantly battling, and that's why storms are so violent, essentially, from what I gathered. But anyway, beside the point. So it's going to be loud. Japanese god of thunder, Raijin. That's why we're calling the bike Raijin. stay that way, because no matter what we do with it, it is still going to be loud. But so the idea behind the bike was that, what if, now that we've changed directions, obviously, is that what if Bosozoku culture had taken root here in America after World War II, with the Japanese people, you know, that were put in the, I can't remember the word right now, incarcerated in the internment camps? Or, I think that's the wrong word, but basically, you know, they were all locked up for just being Japanese, basically. And now, you know, biker gangs could have started from, you know, the resent and all that, but these people had. I don't know, that it wasn't a good time for them. But anyway, yeah, and so what if, you know, they had bigger bikes over here? So, like, and more options, I guess you could say, because over here we had, you know, we had Hondas, Harleys, Triumphs, and stuff like that. There was just a lot more options to choose from. So if a guy wanted, he could have bought a big Honda Goldwing. Obviously later on, because ours is a 70. But say the Bosozoku culture sprouted up here as well. It's the 70s. You know, biker gang, Bosozoku, guy buys a big ass Honda and decides he's gonna, and because of the natural progression of the American shoppers out of, you know, in the 60s and all that, late 50s, 60s, they would have been more inclined to also have style like the 70s chopper riders, right? So guy buys this Honda 77, builds a 70s style American / Bosozoku chopper, and that's where our idea is stemming from. So it's gonna have probably extended front forks, but it's still gonna be, you know, a hydraulic suspension. Chassis is gonna be built around the motor. I thought about using parts of the original, but just to make it for clean and fit the way I want, we're gonna go ahead and do it a little differently. We're going to retain the wire wheels most likely, but they will be powder coated and polished or something like that. But I want a custom tank. Got to have a custom tank on a custom bike. That's just a personal thing. You know, even if we buy one and modify it, got to make it different. Then I'm going to do a special King Queen seat. And it's going to be more towards the later Bosozoku style seats, because I want it a little more wild than that. The colors are going to be red and white. There will be 4 exhausts that will come past the height of the seat. So every cylinder will have its own exhaust. And we'll do little crossovers and all that stuff just for, you know, the sake of somewhat rideability and engine performance. But big long exhausts, gonna do something super fancy and different with those as well. Then yeah, you know, pretty much just gonna be a lot of little, you know, touches and stuff. The motor's gonna get painted, chassis obviously gonna get powder coated. But yeah, I gotta modify I have to find a fairing that I like that fits the Bosozoku fairing, you know, aesthetics and needs, and then we'll go from there, because I also need to make sure that it shrouds the radiator because it's water cooled. But it needs to function and be aesthetically pleasing. It's like I said, we don't want to build a bike that doesn't work. If you can't ride it, it's not a bike. If you can't ride it, it's just a sculpture. And I want to ride it because I want people to see this crazy thing out on the streets. Anyway, but yeah, so we're going to get all that done. With any luck, before the end of next year. because it is going to take some time. It's a personal project. You know, we're footing the bill. I got to find parts. But it shouldn't be super crazy hard to get figured out. Also, it's shaft drive, and that adds a little bit to the trickiness of it being a shaft drive and possibly a hardtail. So we'll have to figure that part out. But